On this episode, we talk with the police chief about Vision Zero in Montgomery County, Maryland. Then we attend the Maryland Bike Symposium. We look at an idea for speed camera Lotto. We drop in on the Vision Zero announcement. Finally, the Maryland Secretary of Transportation addresses the Bike Symposium. Stay tuned.
We're in Rockville, Maryland, talking with Montgomery County Police Chief Manger. What's been going on here this morning?
Well, I was here with the council talking about Vision Zero. This is an effort to bring the traffic fatalities in Montgomery County down to zero.
What sort of problems have you had with traffic fatalities in recent years?
Well, last year we had a total of 44 people killed on roadways in Montgomery County. This is the good news is it's down from past years where we've had 50 and 60 people killed, but it's still far too many folks losing their lives. And so what we talked about today was how do we get that number down even further and ultimately get it to zero. And we talked about the three E's, enforcement, education, and engineering. And education being the most important one. You've got to educate people to be safe when they're driving. The engineering piece is certainly tremendously important, where we find that we have a lot of collisions. You need to look at that a particular intersection or stretch of roadway. Is there something that can be done to make that location safer if we're having a lot of crashes there? And then, of course, the enforcement piece, which is typically what falls on the police to do. And what we talked about, certainly from the enforcement standpoint, is we've got to do it smartly. Let's find out where these collisions are occurring. Let's find out what the reasons for the collision and target those offenses, target those locations. And if we do that, we're hopeful that we can get the number of collisions down closer to zero, certainly get the fatalities down to close to zero.
What role does good engineering have in making the job of enforcement easier?
There's certain stretches of roadway, there's certain intersections where you have issues with the sight line, or whether it's something where perhaps there's no traffic light and you've got traffic that is not, that you find you have a lot of collisions there, and you think, okay, well, if we put a traffic light up there, it would reduce the number of collisions. You've got pedestrian crosswalks that are very difficult to see as a driver approaches. And so, I know that there have been some crosswalks that have been outfitted with lights, so that when a pedestrian's walking across, the lights are flashing along the crosswalk. Anything that gets the driver's attention to let them know that there's someone in the crosswalk is a good thing. So these are engineering things, whether it's putting up additional traffic control devices, whether it's lighting an intersection better, just fixing some roadway design flaws. All of those are engineering things that we do with the goal to reduce the number of collisions.
What sort of things do you see drivers and pedestrians, bicyclists doing that we'd all be safer if they'd stop doing them?
Probably the biggest issue today is distraction. Whether you are a driver and you're looking down at your phone, or you're talking, you have your phone up to your ear and you're not paying full time attention to your driving. The same thing goes with pedestrians. I've seen pedestrians crossing the street and they've got their head down in their phone, looking at their phone instead of looking at the traffic and looking what's going on around them. It's so important for whether you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or a driver to pay full time attention to what you are doing. It's very dangerous on these highways if you don't. Of course, the other issue is for drivers is being impaired, and we still are arresting people who are driving drunk, driving drugged, and impaired as they're on the roadways, and so we need to really target those folks to make sure that we can reduce the number of drunk and drugged drivers on the road. So there's plenty of fault to go around. It's funny when we investigate a crash, the first question I often get asked is, well, who was at fault? Well, we do determine why a crash occurs and typically can determine why a crash has occurred. And more often than not, it's because someone is impaired, someone is not paying attention, or someone's just driving too fast. Those are the three top reasons that we have crashes in this county. And if we can reduce those offenses, then we can reduce the number of people that are hurt and killed.
You mentioned one of those three was driving too fast. How can automated enforcement assist what your officers do in person?
You know, the speed camera program in Montgomery County is loved and hated. You get a lot of folks that I get letters from people saying, please put a speed camera on my street so that we can slow traffic down. I get other people that are just so angry that think that we're just putting these cameras out to raise revenue. The fact is that we're putting them out there to reduce crashes and to get people to drive the speed limit and to make areas of this county safer than they have been. And if the Insurance Institute of America has said that Montgomery County's traffic safety program is a model program for our safe speed program. And while that sounds great, and it's a nice thing to say, the fact is that in my 39 years of being a police officer, there is nothing that has changed driver behavior more than speed cameras. And a lot of folks, I hear it all the time, say, well, we know where the cameras are, so we slow down for the cameras and then they speed right back up. Well, the fact is that we do have mobile cameras out there, and we can target those people that are slowing down for the camera and then speeding right back up. But the fact is that it also creates safety zones. And when we have these cameras near schools or near residential areas where we've had pedestrians struck, where we've had collisions occur, the fact is if people are slowing down even for that brief time, it's a safer area because of it. So I think that automated enforcement does have a role to play. I don't have enough cops to put them at every single intersection and every single stretch of roadway where people are speeding. We still have officers doing that kind of traffic enforcement, but I think that automated enforcement has certainly reduced the number of crashes in this county. But we need to do more in terms of education, in terms of engineering, to add to just the enforcement piece to get people to drive more safely.
Montgomery County is part of the much larger Washington region. Last month, the District of Columbia announced they're doing a Vision Zero program. How does that help the county if the surrounding jurisdictions also start taking safety seriously? Well,
the folks in the Washington region don't just drive in their little locality. I mean, everybody's going around the Beltway, so you could any driver could find themselves in Northern Virginia, in D.C., and in Maryland in the same day. So if we've all got that education piece going, if we all are doing what we can to have the safest engineering of our roadways, it's going to help. I think that certainly as law enforcement talks about best practices and strategies that work in terms of enforcement strategies, and we certainly share that information around the region. But if we could get everybody in the metropolitan area to understand what needs to be done to reduce the number of fatalities, to reduce the number of crashes, I think that it'll be a more effective effort if everybody is hearing that same message.
We're in Annapolis, Maryland, talking with Emily Ranson, who's advocacy coordinator for Bike Maryland. What is Bike Maryland?
Bike Maryland is the statewide advocacy group for all things bicycling within the state of Maryland. We have both an advocacy and education arm of the organization.
What was going on here in Annapolis today?
Today in Annapolis, we had our annual Maryland Bike Symposium. So the symposium is the day that bicyclists from around the state, and today we had representation from Garrett County, where Deep Creek Lake is, to Ocean City. So that was great. So bicyclists from around the state all joined together, meet with their delegates and senators to talk about bicycling issues. This year the big one is Maryland's 3-foot law. And then also just spends the day all together learning about different programs and funding sources and being able to really commune as that community that we are, although we are geographically spread out.
What were some of the highlights of the presentations that were going on today?
So today started out with the announcement that as of July 1st, bicyclists will be allowed over the Hatem Bridge. Then the programming moved into the various funding sources that Maryland government has for municipalities and nonprofits to put in bike infrastructure for both transportation and recreation. We then talked about our legislative program that we are pursuing this year. So these are the bills that we are most interested in. And again, the big one on that was Maryland's 3-foot bill, which Maryland was an early adopter, but the original law had a lot of exceptions, and we are trying to make it apply on all Maryland roadways, not just where it's convenient. So after that, our attendees went off to their various delegates and senators' offices and had lunch. And then we all came back to have a very open meeting of the Maryland Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which I know was it was really interesting for a lot of the attendees who maybe knew that this organization existed, but wasn't really sure how Maryland had institutionalized voice for bicyclists and pedestrian issues. We then talked about the Bike Maryland Bike-Minded Safety Program, where we're actually now able to reach kids in schools and have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with Anne Arundel County Public Schools to teach all of the 3rd and 5th graders over the next 3 years. We finished it up with a fun little program on competitive racing with children. And so Baltimore Youth Cycling is the region's newest team. They are joining Rock Creek Velo as clubs that are getting Maryland residents out on bikes and out in that team atmosphere and getting interested and getting excited.
Okay. Going back to the first thing that happened this morning, access to the bridge over the Susquehanna. I suppose that was a nice little surprise. Why is that so important?
The bridge over the Susquehanna has been a big issue for not just Maryland bicyclists, but for bicyclists that are traveling on the East Coast. This is the only break in the entire East Coast Greenway, and it was here in Maryland. We have been working hard with other advocate groups to try to get pedestrian and bicycle access over the Susquehanna River, and while this access is only going to be workable for bicyclists, it's a step in the right direction, and most importantly, it's a stopgap measure. So for now, bicyclists will be able to get between Perryville and Havre de Grace. Hopefully, sometime in the future, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years out, we'll be able to get an actual designated bridge. But in the meantime, we have an option.
And people are visiting their delegates, talking about various laws you're interested in, particularly the 3-foot bill to get rid of the exceptions that are a real problem. Why is it important that people come down to Annapolis and talk to their delegates in person about bicycle issues?
So, first off, delegates and senators are supposed to represent you. And so when we hold an event like this, we are getting those constituents in the faces of their delegates and senators. But not just that, the fact that we have people from Garrett County willing to make a 2 to 3 hour drive out to come to Annapolis, and we don't start till 10 now, but I mean they were definitely on the road very, very early this morning. That's a committed voter. That's a committed, interested person. And that is the type of person that is representing so many other interested bodies in that district. So how we've heard senators and delegates actually weight it is an in-person presence is worth 100 voters at least, because this is a person who is that committed.
When you're here in Annapolis, trying to get the legislative arena improved for bicyclists, you also talked a bit about some of your educational efforts that were discussed this afternoon. What role does Bike Maryland play in bicycle and driver education in the state?
So in the actual bicycle education within the state, we play a very active role. We have a grant from the Maryland Highway Safety Office and another one now from Safe Routes to Schools that funds our safety program so that we're actually able to go into Maryland public schools and private schools if they are able to get the right number of people, and we're able to teach kids for free. Free to the schools and free to the students, which is a great program. And we are actually now trying to work with the Maryland Department of Education. We're in preliminary talks to really try to make sure that every physical education program around the state knows that this is a resource that they are able to tap into.
And when children learn how to ride a bicycle, properly and safely, early on, what's it going to translate to in a couple of decades when those children are adults out there riding?
So we hope in 10 years when those little 8-year-olds, and I think that's 3rd grade, so they pretty much the youngest that we'd like to hit, we'd like to do 3rd through 5th grade. Those are going to become competent adult cyclists. These are the people who are going to know that, yes, bicyclists have to ride on the right side of the road, and that is where you're safest. That is where you're most predictable. We always cover that you need to run lights, especially in low light conditions, which is required by Maryland law. And so our hope is that this group of educated kids is going to turn into educated adults who, even if they don't choose to ride when they're adults, they're going to be drivers that have at least been exposed to the rules and the rights and responsibilities of everybody out on the road.
What's going to take to make Maryland the best state for bicycling?
Well, we have a lot of competition, and it's good competition. So some other states, they have a lot higher funding. They have a lot stronger laws. So Maryland's 3-foot law has those exceptions, especially the narrow lane exception, makes it basically just a great PR campaign, but not actually a worthwhile law. We see in other states they have much stricter passing laws, they have vulnerable road user laws, and they also have more of a culture of understanding and acceptance that bicyclists have a right to be out on the road, and more drivers are joining them. So in Maryland, it's going to be, we're going to have a bit of culture shift, and part of that culture shift is going to come because our laws are going to change, and we're going to have more educated people who understand, appreciate, and that's how it begins.
Speed is one of the most important factors in traffic safety. The faster a car is going, the more likely it is to kill a pedestrian if they strike them. Technology helps us out. With automated traffic enforcement, you don't need to have a police officer everywhere. In Maryland, a driver has to be going at least 12.5 miles an hour over the speed limit before an automated speed camera can give you a ticket. Even with that grace period, where we are in Montgomery County, Maryland, a typical year, they gross $16 million in automated speed tickets. Even after expenses, the county takes in $8 million. But how do we get around the accusation that the county's just being greedy? The solution is simple: speed camera Lotto. We take all those net proceeds that those recklessly speeding drivers contribute to the county, and we divide it up and give it at random to a few drivers who are obeying the speed limit. 0 miles over the speed limit. Speed camera Lotto. Ask for it where you live.
Whenever there is a fatality in our county, it is one of those unbearable moments. We've had 38 fatalities in the past year, including a number of motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists. We've had 4 in the past 2 months. And it has caused all of us and you can see behind me the entire community, to ask ourselves, what more can we do? We have literally taken to the streets. We have beseeched the governor to change how they deal with state roads. We have had our police have a sting operation looking like homeless people in order to get people that are distracted on their phones. We are urging our state legislature to finally act on drunk driving. But there is more we can do, and there's more that other communities have committed to doing, and it is called Vision Zero. And what Vision Zero says, in effect, is it's time to stop thinking of these fatalities as accidents. These are crashes that we can and must act to prevent. And we must say to ourselves, zero is our goal, and we will set a time certain by which we will achieve that goal. And we will use data to drive changes in policy both at the local level here in Montgomery County and at the state level to bring about that zero result. Our community is united. This resolution has been co-sponsored by every one of my colleagues. You can see the administration is here in force with its full support. And you can see, and you will hear from, community members who say, enough is enough. Let's do everything we can. And what this resolution that will be introduced today says is exactly that. We are going to do everything that we can to get to zero by a time certain.
So we know making investments like this are positive for multimodal transportation. We know that there's benefits for economic development, and to me, it's a great way for us to make investments in a system that clearly there are very passionate supporters of. We also know that partnerships are very important. As we take the dollars that we do have, which are still limited, and how we choose where to invest those that produces the greatest improvements in safety and enjoyment for people who want to use those, those facilities. So, I get it. You can look at me and you can pretty much tell I'm not a bicyclist. I know how to ride one, but that's about it. But we do know, again, as a team, as a very strong team, that bicycling is important to a lot of people. It's part of the transportation system in Maryland, and that's what we have to focus on, is what works here, and that's what we stay focused on. The DOT formed at the end of 2015 an intermodal working group in which we are bringing all of these modes together to see how we can complement each mode's support of other modes. For instance, if you don't know, we have added bicycle cars to MARC trains, and I believe the last advisory meeting actually held their meeting on the MARC train in the bicycle car. So there'd be an understanding of what is available, and people need to know what's there, and we are leveraging our assets in other modes to support bicycling. The Baltimore Link project, which is this complete transformative overhaul of the transit system in Baltimore, includes a great expansion of bike share facilities that are going to be at various locations. It also has a focus on that last mile. How do we get people from a system to where it is that they want to go? So we also are involved in the assistance with local areas as far as bicycle priority plans. And This is very important, I think, as a future direction, because I believe we're going to have to find the right balance of investments in bicycle ways with alignment with local plans. And right now, there's a lot going on that seems a little helter-skelter. So we will be working with you in order to find the best way to use the limited resources we have for that investment in the facilities that we will be undertaking in coming years. Because we have a huge amount, and I mean huge amount, of construction projects planned for all of our modes. And so we need to find those ways that we can leverage those investments into the benefit of bicycle pedestrians. So, the last item that I would like to address, so you can continue on with your agenda, is that I've heard the issues about crossing the Susquehanna and the fact that the Hayden Bridge is does not allow bicycles to cross it. I want to announce to you that starting July 1, 2016, we will allow bicycles across the Hayden Bridge. So I have directed the Transportation Authority to accommodate bikes in as safe a way as we possibly can. It's probably going to be some lighting system that will announce when bicycles are on the bridge, because we know there are issues, and we want everyone to be safe. But we will have to address, obviously, the expansion joints and how those are crossed. We will have to address, again, how to ensure that bicyclists are safe when they're on this somewhat narrow two-lane bridge. But we've listened. I've heard you, and we are responding to the requests that you have made. And I want you to know that you have my commitment that we will continue to listen. We will continue to look for opportunities to make bicycling more available and more safe for those who choose to ride in Maryland, whether they reside here or not.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.